Hey everyone, welcome to Inside Travel Talk. I'm Justin, and in this episode, we're diving into some big changes in the travel world, including airline route cuts and the growing conversation around surveillance pricing, and why working with a travel advisor matters now more than ever. Mark shares his personal journey into the travel industry and some powerful stories about how travel can truly change your perspective. We'll also spotlight a unique all-inclusive resort in Riviera Maya and a great Cancun deal. Then in our cruise segment, we explore new developments from Royal Caribbean, Disney, and AMA Waterways, plus take a deep dive into small ship cruising in Croatia and some incredible cruise deals you won't want to miss. Let's get started.
The Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show presented by BluePlanetVacations.com contains travel deals, promotions, and offers that may be time-sensitive. All offers and information were accurate when the show aired. Travel deals and offers change constantly and are capacity-controlled and subject to change without notice.
Explore your world. It's the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700, and check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inside Travel Talk podcast. I'm Justin, and I had one of those moments this week where I was just scrolling through travel ideas late at night, dreaming about where to go next. And I thought, how did I even get into this world of talking about destinations? And it brought me right back here to this podcast. This space where we get to explore the world, not just through destinations, but through experiences, stories, and insights that actually help you travel better. So whether you're planning your next big vacation or just daydreaming about one, you're in the right place. And of course, I'm joined by Mark, who brings a real expertise to the show. Mark, how are you?
Doing great, Justin. And I love that intro because that's exactly how most travel starts. Just a little spark, right? A late night search, a conversation, a memory, and then suddenly you're halfway across the world.
Exactly. All right, let's jump into this week's travel news. First story, Delta Airlines is cutting routes out of New York, Boston, and a few other cities for the summer season. Now, on the surface, that sounds a little concerning, right? Fewer flights, maybe higher prices. Mark, what's really going on here?
Yeah, this is actually part of a broader trend we've been seeing. Airlines are getting a lot more strategic about where they fly. Instead of just adding more capacity everywhere, they're really focusing on profitability. So if a route isn't performing as expected, especially during peak summer, they'll cut it and move those planes somewhere more profitable.
So it's not necessarily a demand issue?
Not entirely. Demand is still strong overall, but it's about where that demand is strongest. For example, international leisure destinations, Europe, Caribbean, even parts of Asia are seeing huge demand. So airlines like Delta are reallocating resources to those routes.
So what does this mean for travelers?
A couple things. First, fewer direct flight options in some markets, especially out of those major hubs like New York and Boston. Second, potentially higher prices on the routes that remain because there's less competition. And this is where working with a travel advisor really helps. We can often find alternative routes, better connections, or even different departure cities that save money and time.
Yeah, because the average traveler might just search their home airport and call it good.
Exactly. But sometimes driving an extra hour to another airport can save hundreds of dollars or open up better flight times.
All right, second story. And this one is fascinating. Let's talk about surveillance pricing. This is something that's getting a lot of attention lately. So there was this situation where a JetBlue customer noticed their ticket price jumped $230 in just one day. And when they reached out, JetBlue suggested clearing cookies or using incognito mode. Mark, what's going on here?
This is a really important topic. Surveillance pricing basically means companies are using data, your browsing behavior, location, even things like your device or income level to adjust prices dynamically. Now, airlines will say they're not doing this in a discriminatory way, but we are seeing more use of AI and data analytics to personalize pricing.
Which sounds great in theory, but not always for the consumer.
Right? Because personalized doesn't always mean cheaper. It can mean they think you're willing to pay more. We've seen similar things with companies like Instacart and Uber. Uber even increases prices when your phone battery is low because you're more likely to accept a higher fare.
That's wild.
It is. And this is where travel advisors really come in as an advantage. The systems we use, global distribution systems, don't tie pricing to individual user behavior. They're neutral. So when we search for flights, we're seeing the lowest available fares based on availability, not based on who you are.
So essentially, it levels the playing field.
You're getting unbiased pricing. And that's something most people don't realize. They assume booking online is always cheapest, but that's not necessarily true anymore.
All right, let's shift gears into our main topic for this segment. We had a listener, Rachel, who called in and asked, Mark, why did you want to become a travel advisor?
Yeah, I love this question. For me, it really started with family. I'm a third generation travel advisor. My grandmother actually started it all. She took a group of neighbors to the opening of the Polynesian Cultural Center in Hawaii. It was just kind of a one-time trip, but then those neighbors told their friends, and suddenly she was organizing more trips. And before long, it became a full-time business.
That's amazing. Just word of mouth.
Yeah, and that's how this industry used to grow. Relationships, trust, experience. For me, growing up in that environment, travel was always part of life. But what really drew me in wasn't just the destinations, it was what travel does to people.
What do you mean?
Travel changes your perspective. It helps you understand the world in a way that nothing else can. You can read about cultures, watch documentaries, follow the news, but until you're actually there, talking to people, experiencing daily life, it's different.
Do you have a trip that really stands out for that?
Yeah, a few trips really stand out. One that really impacted me was a lower Danube river cruise. It goes through Eastern Europe, places like Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. These are countries that had very different experiences during and after World War II. And you can still feel that history today, the way people think, the way they view the world. It's shaped by those experiences.
So it's not just sightseeing, it's understanding.
You know, Justin, that lower Danube river cruise is one of those experiences that really stays with you because it's not just about the scenery. It's about understanding how people lived not that long ago as you travel through countries like Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Romania. You start to hear firsthand what life was like under communist rule. People talk about limited freedoms, government control over daily life, restricted travel, and even shortages of basic goods. And then you look around today, open markets, growing tourism, young people building business, a real sense of optimism in many places, and you can see just how much has changed in a relatively short time. What really stands out is hearing those personal stories from locals who lived through both eras. It gives you a much deeper appreciation for the resilience of these cultures and helps you understand why their perspectives on politics, freedom, and opportunity can be very different from what we're used to. It's one of those trips where you come away not just having seen new places, but really understanding them on a human level.
What's your next trip?
The next trio that really stands out was the Holy Land, Israel and Jordan. That trip really opened my eyes. I remember sitting in a restaurant in Bethlehem watching this interaction between a Palestinian restaurant owner, our Palestinian bus driver, our Jewish tour guide, and our Christian guide. And they were all just talking, laughing, sharing stories.
That's powerful.
It really is, because what you see in the media is often very one-sided, but when you're there, you see the human side, the connections. And what struck me on that trip was how, despite very real differences in beliefs and backgrounds, people still found ways to relate to each other on a daily basis. Sitting in that restaurant in Bethlehem, watching those conversations unfold, there was respect, there was humor, there was just normal life happening. It reminds you that beyond the headlines and the politics, these are communities made up of individuals who are raising families, running businesses, and trying to live meaningful lives. Travel gives you that fuller picture. It adds nuance, it adds empathy, and it helps you move beyond assumptions to really understand the complexity of a place like the Holy Land.
Yeah, that's something you can't replicate.
Exactly. And then China, I've been there 3 times, and every visit was completely different. The scale alone is hard to comprehend until you're actually there. You're walking along the Great Wall of China, and it just stretches endlessly over the mountains, and you realize the sheer ambition and history behind it. Then you visit places like the Summer Palace in Beijing, and it's this peaceful, intricate reflection of imperial life with gardens, lakes, and architecture that tells a completely different story of China's past. And then you go to Xi'an, where you're standing in front of the terracotta warriors, and it connects you to thousands of years of history in a really tangible way. Or you're cruising along the Yangtze River, seeing rural villages, massive modern cities, and everything in between. It really shows you that contrast between ancient traditions and rapid modernization. That's what makes China so fascinating. It's not just one experience. It's layers of history, culture, and progress all happening at once. And every time I've gone back, I've come away with a completely new perspective.
All right, let's talk about your hotel pick of the week. This is a new segment we are going to occasionally do to highlight a specific hotel. Mark, you had a client recently return from El Dorado Seaside Suites in Riviera Maya, right?
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite resorts in Cancun's Riviera Maya area. What makes it unique is that every room has an ocean view and is connected to an infinity pool. So imagine walking out onto your balcony and stepping right into a pool.
That's unreal.
Yeah, and what makes this unique is that each of the 8 floors has its own pool connected to every room, so it feels very private. Now, the beach directly in front of that section of the hotel is okay, but the resort also has another area called the Palms section, which has one of the best beaches in the region. It's a short 5-minute walk to a beautiful white sand beach.
So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Great pool experience and a great beach option. The food is also fantastic. Multiple dining options, really high quality, and it's part of their more inclusive program.
What does that include?
It goes beyond standard all-inclusive. The more inclusive concept is really where a resort like El Dorado Seaside Suites separates itself from a traditional all-inclusive. Most all-inclusives focus on what's happening inside the resort, your meals, drinks, entertainment, but this program really extends your experience beyond the property and adds a lot more value. For example, guests get complimentary access and transportation to nearby parks and experiences. That can include places like eco-adventure parks, where you can go snorkeling in natural lagoons or exploring underground cenotes. Those are experiences that would normally cost quite a bit extra if you book them on your own. Another great feature is the included airport transfers, which makes the arrival and departure seamless. You're not worrying about taxis or shuttles when you land. They also include things like catamaran sails and guided cultural experiences, so you're not just sitting at the resort the whole time. You're actually getting out and seeing the Riviera Maya.
What is the dining experience like at the El Dorado Seaside Suites?
You'll find premium dining options with no reservations required at many of the restaurants, higher-end beverages, beachside service, and unique experiences like beachfront dinners or mixology tastings. One of my favorite things is during breakfast, there usually are fresh made tortillas with a specialty meat to make tacos.
Tacos for breakfast?
There's nothing like a taco with a fresh tortilla for breakfast.
All right, time for the travel deal of the week. And since we're talking about Cancun, this one's perfect. Right now, Delta Vacations is offering SkyMiles members up to $250 off per booking when you book a flight and hotel package.
Yeah, and this is available exclusively through travel advisors.
And it's valid for travel anywhere Delta serves, not just Cancun, right?
Correct. And on top of the discount, you also earn up to 10,000 bonus SkyMiles.
And this can be combined with that more inclusive program, with El Dorado Resorts we just talked about?
Absolutely.
All right, and as always, you can call Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 to book your vacation. All right, that wraps up segment 1. Coming up next, we're diving into cruise news, including Royal Caribbean's new European destination.
You're listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show with Patrick Wiscombe and Mark Faldmo, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show now, 801-649-3700. That's 801-649-3700. And check out the podcast at InsideTravelTalk.com. We'll be right back.
Inside Travel Talk is brought to you by AMA Waterways. From castles to capitals, discover Europe the way it was meant to be seen. By River, experience iconic destinations, immersive culture, and unforgettable moments, all in comfort and style. Whether you love history, food, or scenic beauty, there's a journey waiting for you. To set out on your own river cruise journey, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or BluePlanetVacations.com.
This is the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com, America's best travel advisors. Call or text the show right now, 801-649-3700, 801-649-3700. And now, here are your hosts.
All right, welcome back. Let's jump into cruise news. First up, Royal Caribbean has opened its first private destination in Europe, specifically in Santorini. Mark, this is interesting because Santorini is already such a popular destination. Why add a private experience?
Yeah, Santorini is beautiful, but it's also crowded, especially when multiple cruise ships are in port. What Royal Caribbean is doing here is creating a more controlled, exclusive experience. Their beach club allows guests to enjoy Santorini without the chaos.
So it's more about enhancing the experience?
Exactly. You still get the iconic views, the scenery, but in a more relaxed setting. And what Royal Caribbean has done with their beach club experience in Santorini is really create a full, well-rounded day on the island instead of just a quick crowded stop. The beach club itself is set on one of Santorini's volcanic black sand beaches, and it's designed to be comfortable and easy. You've got complimentary loungers, umbrellas, towels, and Wi-Fi, so you can just settle in and enjoy the Aegean views. Food and drinks are included as well. There's an all-you-can-eat Greek buffet, along with more casual options like food trucks serving gyros and fresh salads. But what really makes this experience stand out is that it's not just a beach day. They've built it into a more structured, ultimate Santorini day excursion, where you also get guided tours to both Oia and Fira. So you're still seeing those iconic whitewashed villages, the blue domes, the cliffside views, everything people dream about when they think of Santorini, but without having to navigate the crowds and logistics on your own.
Next story. Disney Cruise Line has extended its home port agreement in San Diego through 2031.
This is great news for West Coast travelers. It means more cruise options without having to fly to Florida. It makes cruising more accessible from the West Coast.
Yeah, that's really exciting for West Coast travelers. Let me ask you this, Mark. When Disney Cruise Line is sailing out of San Diego, what kinds of itineraries are we talking about?
Yeah, great question, because Disney actually offers a really nice variety out of the West Coast. One of the most popular options is the Baja Mexico itineraries. These are typically shorter 3 to 5 night cruises that stop in places like Ensenada. They're great for families who maybe don't want to commit to a full week, but still want that Disney cruise experience. They also offer longer Mexican Riviera itineraries, usually 5 to 7 nights, where you'll visit ports like Cabo San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, and Mazatlan. Those are fantastic because you get a mix of beach time, excursions, and really beautiful coastal scenery. So overall, it just gives travelers more flexibility and makes the Disney Cruise Line experience a lot more accessible for people on the West Coast.
All right. Third story. AMA Waterways is planning to expand to over 50 ships by 2032. And Mark, you've talked about them before.
AMA Waterways is my top choice for river cruising in Europe. They do an incredible job, smaller ships, more personalized service, great itineraries, and this expansion shows how popular river cruising has become.
So it's growing fast?
It really is, and in a way that's changing how people think about cruising altogether. River cruising used to be seen as more of a niche, maybe older demographic, slower pace, but now it's becoming much more mainstream. You're seeing a wider range of travelers, including younger couples and even multi-generational families, starting to look at river cruises as a really immersive way to see Europe. And what's driving that growth is accessibility and variety. Lines like AMA Waterways are adding more ships, which means more itineraries and more departure dates. And they're expanding beyond the classic rivers like the Danube and Rhine into places like the Douro in Portugal. The experience itself is also evolving. You've got more active excursions, bike tours, hiking options, culinary experiences. So it's not just sightseeing from a bus anymore. And because these ships are smaller, usually around 150 passengers, you're docking right in the heart of these cities and towns, which makes it incredibly convenient. The other big factor is value. When you look at what's included, excursions, dining, drinks, Wi-Fi, it's actually a very competitive option compared to land-based travel in Europe. So as more people discover that and as more ships come online, it's really fueling that growth.
All right, main cruise topic. Jackie asked about cruising around Croatia, specifically smaller ships or private options. Mark, what would you recommend?
Yeah, Croatia is perfect for small ship cruising. One of my top recommendations is Katarina Line. These ships typically hold around 30 passengers, so it's a very intimate experience.
That's a big difference from a mega ship.
Huge difference. You're docking in small ports, exploring hidden coves, really experiencing the coastline. They offer different categories: deluxe, superior, deluxe, premium, superior, and premium. The main differences are ship size, cabin quality, and amenities.
And the itineraries?
One of my favorites is the Dalmatian Paradise itinerary. It includes places like Split and Dubrovnik. Each stop has its own personality, history, beaches, culture.
And pricing?
Typically between $1,200 and $2,800 per person for a 7-night cruise, depending on the ship.
That's actually pretty reasonable.
It really is for what you're getting. And for even smaller groups, we can arrange private yacht charters, 2 to 10 guests, fully crewed or skippered only options.
That's next level.
Cruising around Croatia is one of those experiences that feels completely different from traditional ocean cruising. You're on a much smaller ship, usually with just a few dozen guests, and you're sailing right along the Dalmatian coast, stopping in these beautiful historic towns and quiet island villages that the larger ships simply can't access. It's very relaxed. Days are a mix of swimming in crystal clear coves, walking through old stone cities, and enjoying local food. It feels more personal, more immersive, and honestly more like traveling through a destination rather than just visiting it. And right now, there's about a 20% discount on some of those charters.
All right, cruise deal of the week, Norwegian Cruise Line's second guest sales free promotion.
This is a great one. Essentially, the second guest base fare is free. You just pay taxes and fees. Norwegian also adds a lot of value with their free at sea program. It's not just a simple discount. It's a bundle of perks that can significantly enhance the overall cruise experience. Typically, it includes a premium beverage package, so you're getting a wide selection specialty drinks included throughout your sailing. You'll also get specialty dining credits, which allow you to experience some of the higher-end restaurants on board, steakhouse, Italian, French cuisine. places that would normally be an extra charge. Wi-Fi is another inclusion, usually a set number of minutes or sometimes upgraded packages depending on the promotion, which helps you stay connected while at sea.
Are there any other additions?
In many cases, they also include shore excursion credits, often around $50 per port, which can be applied toward tours and activities. And on select sailings, you might even see airfare heavily discounted for the second guest, which is a huge value add. The key thing to understand is that while it's called free, there are still some service charges and gratuities tied to those packages. But even with that, the overall value is typically much better than purchasing everything individually. It really allows you to have a more all-inclusive style cruise experience without the upfront all-inclusive price.
And you've got a couple recommended sailings.
Yeah. First, a 7-day Western Caribbean cruise on the Norwegian Viva. One of their newer ships. This is a 7-day Western Caribbean cruise sailing round trip from Galveston in early November 2026. The Norwegian Viva is one of their newest ships, so you're getting a very modern experience. Things like the Ocean Boulevard, outdoor promenade, upscale dining options, and a more refined overall design compared to some older ships. The itinerary itself is very well balanced. Typically have a relaxing day at sea to start, which is great for getting settled in and enjoying the ship. From there, you'll visit Cozumel, Mexico. This is one of the most popular cruise ports in the Caribbean. It's known for incredible snorkeling and diving along the Mesoamerican reef, plus beach clubs and excursions to the mainland to see Mayan ruins like Tulum. Roatan, Honduras. This is a standout stop. Roatan has some of the best coral reefs in the Caribbean, so snorkeling and diving here are top tier. It also has a more untouched, natural feel compared to some busier ports. Costa Maya, Mexico, a great mix of relaxation and culture. You can visit nearby Mayan ruins like Chachoben, or just enjoy the port area with its pools, shops, and beach access. Pricing on this sailing is very attractive for what you're getting. Interior cabins typically start around $750 to $900 per person, while balcony cabins are usually in the $1,100 to $1,500 range, depending on availability and exact sailing date.
All right, Mark, this next one really caught my attention. A Hawaii to Tahiti sailing. This feels a little more bucket list than your typical cruise. What can you tell us about this itinerary?
Yeah, this is one of those truly special trips. It's a 12-day South Pacific sailing aboard the Norwegian Spirit, and it's all about the journey as much as the destinations. You usually start in Honolulu, and then you'll visit islands like Maui and Kauai before heading out across the Pacific.
So you're getting a little bit of Hawaii before heading into French Polynesia?
Exactly, and that's a big part of the appeal. You're combining two incredible regions into one trip. After Hawaii, you have a few days at sea, which I know some people wonder about, but honestly, those are some of my favorite days. It gives you time to really disconnect and enjoy the ship.
And then you arrive in those dream destinations, right?
Yeah, and this is where it really becomes unforgettable. You're looking at stops in places like Bora Bora, Moorea, and Tahiti. Bora Bora is just stunning. Turquoise water, overwater bungalows, that classic South Pacific look. Moorea has these dramatic green mountains and a more relaxed feel, and Tahiti gives you a mix of local culture, markets, and that French Polynesian charm.
That sounds incredible. What about pricing on something like this?
This is for a May 28th, 2027 departure. And for a trip like this, it's actually very reasonable. Inside cabins usually start around $1,800 to $2,200 per person. And balconies are typically in the $2,800 to $3,800 range, depending on availability and timing.
Now, you've actually done this one yourself, right?
I have, and one of my favorite spots on that ship is the aft pool area. Just watching the ocean as you sail through the South Pacific, it's incredible. There's something about being at the back of the ship, seeing nothing but open water, and then all of a sudden, an island comes into view. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and it really gives you that sense of how vast and beautiful this part of the world is.
That sounds like one of those moments you don't forget.
It really is. And that's what makes this itinerary so special. It's not just the ports, it's the feeling of the journey itself.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Inside Travel Talk. Today we covered a lot, from airline route changes and the growing impact of surveillance pricing to why working with a travel advisor can really make a difference. Mark shared some incredible personal stories about how travel shapes our understanding of the world. We highlighted a fantastic resort in Riviera Maya. Then on the cruise side, we explored new developments from Royal Caribbean and Disney, the growth of river cruising, and took a deep dive into everything from small ship cruising in Croatia to those incredible Caribbean and South Pacific itineraries. If anything we talked about sparked your interest, now is a great time to start planning. And as always, we'd love to help you make that trip a reality. You can call Blue Planet Vacations for all of your travel needs at 888-718-7717. Thanks so much for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more travel insights, stories, and inspiration. And I'll leave you with this. Travel is the only thing you buy that makes you richer.
That's it. That's the end of the show. You've been listening to the Inside Travel Talk podcast and radio show, presented by BluePlanetVacations.com. Book your adventure right now. Call 888-718-7717. That's 888-718-7717. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Inside Travel Talk is brought to you by El Dorado Spa Resorts. Escape to Cancun's Riviera Maya with El Dorado's more inclusive experience, featuring gourmet dining, premium drinks, beachfront luxury, and unforgettable extras like snorkeling, beach clubs, and curated excursions. To start planning your all-inclusive escape to El Dorado Spa Resorts, contact Blue Planet Vacations at 888-718-7717 or blueplanetvacations.com.